Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video I'm going to offer you 10 top tips in relation to practicing. So whether you're learning an instrument or whether you're a singer, these are 10 tips that would apply to everybody. They're not exhaustive, there are many more tips that one could give, but it's a question that many people have. After all, many people spend hours actually practicing an instrument, but sometimes people feel frustrated because despite the effort they're putting in, they feel as if they're not really getting a good payback on that investment of time. And it's something that I think we should be talking much more about, actually, how to practice in a way that's effective. And the first thing is a question that often comes up: how long should I practice? Well, of course, you can practice for as long as you want to, and that will be determined by all sorts of things, not least your own enthusiasm for it, but also what the restraints are on your time. So I'd say the first thing is don't punish yourself about this. Don't spend your life thinking, I'm not doing enough practice, but do the practice that you can fit in to your schedule. Now, if you're working through a kind of graded exam system, there's one little tip around that's maybe quite helpful, and it's simply this: 10 minutes a day per grade. All right, so if you're doing the sort of graded thing, well, 10 minutes per day per grade. So let's put that one up here for starters to think about. So, in other words, if you're a beginner and you've been just going for a few months and now maybe you're working in the direction of the first exam, you might think, well, I'll try and do 10 minutes a day. A lot of people will say 10 minutes, well, I do an hour a day. That's fantastic. That's all a bonus. And a lot of teachers wouldn't be happy with 10 minutes a day. They'd be saying you've got to do much more than that. But this is a kind of minimum, really. And actually, it's not just the 10 minutes, it's the per day that matters, because a lot of people fall into this trap for all sorts of understandable reasons. The week ticks by between lessons, we don't do very much work, and then the day before the lesson we suddenly think, oh my goodness, I haven't done much practice this week, I better get some in before I go for my lesson. Actually, it would be better to do 10 minutes every day than it would be to blast it once a week. So it's just a little maxim for a minimum. And if you're thinking that maybe you're working to grade 8, well, think what that actually means. So 10 minutes per day per grade, it's 80 minutes a day if you're doing grade 8. And that's possibly a tough order for some people, but it's just a little sort of thing to play to. So you sort of think, okay, I'm working at about grade 3 standard, half an hour a day would be a good way of thinking about the minimum input of practice, but the regularity is the important thing. Okay, now, like any good sports person, you want to warm up before you actually get going. If you're sensible with exercise, you don't just charge into an exercise routine. You do a few stretches and a bit of preparation before you get going. So some kind of warm up. Now, what does the warm up comprise? Well, it might be scales. If you're working for exams, well, scales are often part of the agenda, aren't they? So practicing a few scales, practicing a few arpeggios, maybe doing some technical exercises. So particularly wind and brass players have technical exercises that help to build up stamina, technical exercises that are designed for particular aspects of playing, like playing long notes or high notes, or there are different techniques depending on the instrument that you're actually learning. But some kind of warm-up that's actually relevant to all of that agenda would be really good. And also thinking that while you're warming up, actually playing scales and arpeggios, such a good thing for finger agility if you're a keyboard player, for intonation if you're a string player, a wind player, a singer. This all helps with all the other items on your practice agenda. So it's not kind of like, well, I've got to do these horrible things called scales and technical exercises, then I can get on to the real business of making music. These are all intensely relevant. So, finger agility, playing in tune, knowledge of keys, getting familiar with scale patterns and arpeggio patterns that come up in pieces. All of that is then part of your daily warm-up routine. So, think about that with your teacher as to what's going to make the most effective warm-up routine in relation to all that. And then, of course, having done your warm-up, you'll be wanting to get into playing your pieces. And the thing is here, how do we actually go about this? So here's my sort of third tip. And it's really, are we going to play pieces, or is it about practice? Okay, so kind of there's a difference here. And I find a lot of people, when they get into their pieces, they just want to play them. So they start in bar one and they play the whole piece. And then, quite a bit of time has gone by because probably there have been mistakes and stops and starts and things. And they get to the end and then they think, well, what should I do? Well, I'll play it again. So they start at the beginning and they play it again. Is that a good way to practice? Not particularly. It might be a good way to play at whatever stage you are, but it's not particularly effective practice. And in a way, practicing like that can be negative because there's always the danger that you are practicing and confirming your mistakes. If you always play C sharp in this chord when it's supposed to be C natural, the more you do that, the more you're practicing that wrong note. So it's good to think, actually, how are we going to do this? What is the difference between playing and practicing? So, when we're practicing, we're sorting out things. We're sorting out fingering, for example. We're sorting out bowing. We're sorting out when we're going to breathe. We're rehearsing particular things that are slightly awkward. And I'm a great believer in a kind of special measures approach. And I'll just write that up here. So, special measures. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in the UK education system, we sometimes have inspectors put schools into special measures. When they feel that there's something that's not quite going as well as it could be, well, they'll put that place into special measures and they'll isolate areas where things aren't quite what they think they should be, and they'll throw resources at them. So lots of people, lots of advice just to help that school to tool up in that area. Well, I think the special measures routine is quite effective for practice. If you think about it, having been through the piece and you thought, well, yes, I can't play that chord there. I don't know what the fingering is there. I always have trouble with the flats in that bar. What you can do is kind of isolate those bars, those chords, those particular notes that are causing trouble, and you can put them in special measures. And then you can throw everything at the special measures corner. So when you begin to practice a piece, instead of starting in the first bar, which may be happy or may not be, you think, where's my first special measures corner? So I'll really work at that and about the specific thing that needs fixing. So is it a matter of fingering? Is it a matter of trying to play that note in tune? Is it a matter of trying to get a better sound on that note? What is it that I need to do there? So you deal with your special measures corners, because if you don't get time to play through the whole piece, but you've just dealt with your special measures corners, that's much more effective in terms of practice. And it may be as you go that the special measures corners actually kind of change. Something that was really awkward, suddenly if you've done some decent practice on it, you're fine with it. It's going okay now. Great. Something else that sort of used to be okay, you're sort of now thinking, actually, now it's going a little bit faster. That's not happy. So be flexible. You might take certain corners out of special measures, just like the UK does in the education system, but then you might have another area where you think, well, that now needs to go into special measures. So sometimes those special measure corners will move as you go. But I think it's a very effective way of doing it. But certainly getting a difference in your mind between playing and practicing. It's very nice to play. Sometimes I just sit down, I just want to play. I don't want to practice, I just want to play. And that's great. Just have a nice chill time playing things that you like and enjoy what you're doing. That's all part of being a musician. There are other times though where you think, actually, I've got to get this good. I'm playing it in a concert. It's got to be right. So it's got to be plenty of this and plenty of this, just to make sure we've got everything where we want it. So that's kind of, I think, a more effective way of working. And it also encourages you not necessarily to work A to Z. I mean, look for how the piece is written. Look at the various ingredients of it. You know, what's happening in the pitch? Are there some awkward leaps, for example, that I need to practice? So I'm just thinking about the pitch of that. Think about the rhythm. Are there corners where I think I'm not really sure what that rhythm is? So can I isolate the rhythm of that particular moment? Maybe just clap the rhythm. Maybe just think through, where do the beats fit in the bar here? How does the rhythm attach to those beats? So we're happy about every corner of the rhythm. Particularly for keyboard players, chords are often a challenge, you know, finding chords or getting from one chord to another chord. You know, maybe we need to practice just playing a chord over and over again. Then we need to practice going from the previous chord to this awkward chord. Then maybe practicing going from this awkward chord to the next chord. Then the previous chord to the awkward chord to the next chord. You know, so you can build up a corner in that sort of way, but sometimes just thinking about the particular ingredient, as it were, that's causing some bother. So for some people, you know, whether it's singers, string players, wind and brass players, there are going to be some intonation corners. Sometimes when you have those big leaps out of one register into another, you suddenly think, actually, that's not great. It's not really in tune when I go up there. So what have I got to do with my embouchure or my support, or what is it I need to do? And can I practice that particular leap so that I've got that really good? So we've got the intonation in really solidly. Fast passages sometimes, particularly for string players where things get a bit slippery, when, you know, you just think, actually, I really need to slow down that little corner of semiquavers there, make sure I've got every single note in tune, and then I'll just gradually speed up, go on a loop with this little group of notes until I can hear that they're clear, that they're in tune, and they are capable of being played a little bit faster. If they're not, slow them down again, you know. For keyboard players, it will be things like doing lots of hands separately practice. You know, we often need to do that as keyboard players. Plenty of right hand, plenty of left hand, then put it back together again, rather than just playing hands together all the time. So, you know, that's all part of what I mean by this agenda of practicing rather than playing and thinking about special measures, corners. Okay, so what's tip number 4 then? Well, it's this: work slowly. Now, I find many people find that a challenge, you know. You've got an exciting piece to play and you just want to play it up to speed because it's much more exciting when it goes up to speed. When I play it slowly, it sounds really boring and tedious. Fine, but slow practice is how we get things right. So if we can play it slowly, actually, we know it's got the potential to go quickly. So really work slowly. I think actually speed is the last ingredient that we need to worry about. We do need to concern ourselves with speed ultimately, because lots of people play pieces under tempo and it loses character because it's just not going fast enough. Some people play pieces a bit too quickly actually, and then it's totally breathless, but that's another issue. But when you're practicing, work slowly. Really be particular, really make sure now, has that chord gone down together? When I play these notes slowly, do I like the quality of the tone that I'm producing? You know, is the attack good? Have I really got the articulation in a way that's stylistic, expressive, you know, all these sort of things? We can hear those things when we work slowly, and sometimes when we rush through, we kind of miss out the detail and it's not very kind of clear to listen to, and there's imperfections in sound and intonation and ensemble and all sorts of things. So working slowly helps us to hear exactly what's going on. I'm also a great believer in working slowly, not just for technical reasons, but for musical reasons. Sometimes when you work slowly, you hear things inside the music that you don't quite hear when you're going at speed. But having heard them when you're going at a slow speed, then as you speed up, you hold on to what that's saying to us musically, expressively. So lots of slow work, and build up your speed gradually, because that's another danger, that you do the slow work and that's all great, and then suddenly you fly to full speed and then you say, oh, it doesn't work, I can't play the piece. Then you get fed up and you lose interest. Don't blame you. But actually, you know, work up that tempo very gradually. And I'm a great believer in 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And if you want to work with a metronome, I know not everybody does, but there's merit in it. So for example, if you can play something at 60, well, you might think, well, can I play it at 65? If I can do that comfortably, can I play it at 70? Even if you can play it comfortably at 70, go back to 65, play it again at 65, make sure it's really safe, go up to 70, up to 75. If it's still happy, come back to 70, 75, 80. Rather than just increase your tempo, up to, step back, up to, step back. Because I think that's a way of consolidating that increase in tempo so that we increase the tempo gradually and we just step back every time just to consolidate that tempo increase. So we gradually work up speed without really kind of noticing that we're building it. So that's sort of part of the same thing. So work slowly, and then ultimately when you've got everything happy, build speed gradually. So that would be the second half of that particular tip. Okay, so that's the fourth one. What's the fifth tip? Well, it's this. Don't just process notes. I've had many performances over the years in the exam room, in music festivals, and all sorts of other environments where people just sit down or stand up and play the notes. And they're not doing anything much more. So when you're practicing, don't just think this is about trying to play the notes. Because if you're just interested in playing the notes, you might as well program your computer to do it for you, really, because it will be much more reliable. It won't ever make a mistake. It will play in time. But actually, is it really an expressive performance full of the human soul? No, it isn't. So that's why we have humans making music. So while you're practicing and thinking about notes and fingering and all these things, and rhythm and chord placing or playing in tune, all the things we've talked about, also, as you're going, think about including those details like dynamics, phrasing, things that are written into the music, tempo changes, accentuation. Sometimes the difference between an accent, a tenuto, a staccato, all those sort of things. But work at the detail of it. Think about how you're going to shape a phrase. So there are things beyond the markings in the music where you sort of feel, now this is the climax of this phrase. There's a lovely colourful chord there, or there's just an expressive note in the melody that needs a bit of time. So maybe we're going to build up to that, and then we're going to kind of relax the dynamic shape a little bit afterwards. It may come with other things like a little bit of flexibility in the tempo. It depends on the piece, on the style of the piece. Thinking about things like it might be marked staccato. Does it want to be a kind of elegant staccato like it might be in a lot of classical period music? Does it want to be a more defined staccato or even a more aggressive staccato depending on the mood of the piece? So you've got to sort of think beyond the notes. All right, so if I put it that way, think beyond the notes, then that's what I'm thinking about there. All the expressive detail and how you're going to kind of deal with it. And if you can start thinking about that as you go, well, that's all good. Because what some people do, and I've always have a sort of slight uncomfortable feeling about this, some people say, I'll learn the notes first and then I put the expression in later. Well, it's possible, and to some extent, for example, you could decide you're going to add some dynamics later. On the other hand, if you've practiced a piece for weeks sometimes, months sometimes, without the phrasing, without the articulation, actually when you put it in, you've got to change the way that you've been playing it all that time. It's not just a question of putting it in, it's the fact that you've played it entirely smoothly for months and now suddenly you've got to put staccato notes and accents in. That means you've got to learn to play it differently. And when you're under pressure, you'll go back to what you've been practicing for all those months. So if you can get all that stuff in very early on in the process, then you never know any other way of playing it. So thinking beyond the notes to including as much detail as you can. Okay, what's my tip number 6? So it's this: listen to great performances. Now, why do I say that? The great thing is, in this day and age, it's just so easy to do this. You may just be unlucky enough to be playing a piece that hasn't been recorded, is not available anywhere. Well, that's unfortunately how it goes. Even then, you might be able to hear another piece by the same composer or another piece in the same style or something like that. But I'm a great believer in listening to great performances of your pieces, and with YouTube, Spotify, all these things, it's perfectly possible to get hold of great performances. Now, what's the point of doing that? Some people listen to great performances and then they just completely copy them. So they think, well, if it's good enough for this great performer, it's good enough for me. That's okay. It's a bit unimaginative. If you can listen to several performances of the same piece, that's even better. And I don't mean here, with all due respect to everybody doing this, I don't mean listening to people sort of knocking it up at home when there are performances available, aren't there, where you can hear things full of wrong notes, the wrong speed and all sorts of things going wrong. I mean, listen to really good performers giving professional performances, because it will give you insight. It will enable you to hear maybe how the piece is supposed to go. You might be surprised. You might think, oh, goodness, I never realised it went that fast. Or I didn't realise that those staccatos really perhaps ought to be much shorter than I'm playing them, or more refined in some way than I'm playing them. So it kind of enables you to think the piece. Don't forget, you're listening to one person's interpretation. That's why I say listen to more than one performance if you can, because I found that fascinating to listen to three people playing the same piece in three different ways and thinking, okay, what do I like about this performance? What do I like about that one? What do I like about that one? And sometimes you take ideas from different places and it just helps you to formulate your own thinking. So you're not trying to copy them, you're not trying to play it exactly the same as someone does, but you're taking ideas and it's helping you to form your own interpretation of what's there. So you think, yeah, okay, I really like that aspect there. I never thought that actually those four notes are something you might draw attention to. I was just playing them in the background, but actually this performer's drawn them out and I'm beginning to hear why that's happening. Or you might think, I don't know why that's happening because it doesn't make any sense to me. Fine, it helps you to decide not to do that. So you pick up these different threads from different performances and then you think, okay, in the light of that, how do I want to interpret the thing? So, don't copy it, listen to it, but don't just hear it. That's what I'm saying, listen. Don't just hear it and think that's nice. Listen to it, maybe have the score in front of you and just think, now what's happening here with the tone? What's happening with the phrasing? What's happening with the flexibility of speed? All these kind of things. Try to use it to develop your own interpretation, your own musical imagination, and really try to get to understand the music. Try to put yourself in the mind of the composer and think, what's going on here? If you have the skills to do this, try to analyze the music a little bit. Why is somebody making something of that chord? Oh, actually, when you look at it, that's what we call a chromatic chord, or it's using notes that are not in the key, but it's quite colourful. So maybe the composer's written this colourful chord because he or she wants us to draw attention to it. How am I going to do that? Am I going to get louder to that point? Am I going to take a bit more time over that moment? Am I going to draw emphasis to one of the notes in that chord? What am I going to do? So you find your own way of interpreting it through trying to understand what the composer's doing. So that's quite a big agenda, but that's kind of what that is helping you to do. Okay, now apart from all of that, here's my tip number 7. And I mean this every day. So make time each day for, what's this going to be? Sight reading. And I can almost hear some people groaning at this point, because lots of people say, oh no, not sight reading. I hate sight reading. Oh dear, isn't it tedious? Why do we have to do sight reading for exams? All this kind of stuff. Well, I sympathise, because it's a tough call, isn't it, to get good at sight reading. But the thing is, sight reading is such a useful musical skill. If you can pick up a piece of music and you can kind of think, yeah, I've got a pretty good idea how this goes, and you can sit down and play through it, actually, that's going to make all of this stuff an awful lot easier. There's, there's one negative in being a good sight reader, which I'll flag up. If you're a really good sight reader, it tends to make you do this, play, instead of doing this, practice. You just think, I can read this, I can play it through a few times, I'll be able to get around the piece. It's great if you need to learn things quickly. And I've often been in musical environments when I've had no time at all to learn a piece and I've had to perform it that day or the day after. Well, it's quite good to be able to sight read so you can get straight on with this, really. But in the ideal world, we want to do our practice. But sight reading skills are so important. And lots of people say, well, I can't do sight reading. And it's a sort of vicious circle. I can't do sight reading, so I don't bother practicing it. I don't like practicing it, so actually I don't get any good at it. You know, that is a real vicious circle, that. But it's a really useful, essential musical skill. And you wouldn't really, if you were, say, preparing for an exam, think, I'll pick up that third piece the day before the exam and see if I can learn it. You know, that would be an act of madness, wouldn't it? But I think lots of people leave the sight reading till the last minute before the exam. But get used to reading every day. And even if you find this difficult, make it manageable. Don't try and read pages of music. Just think, can I read one line of this piece? And break it down again, you know. Can I clap the rhythm that's going on here? Can I just work on pitching the notes without worrying about the rhythm, you know? Can I put those two things together? And then, you know, can I do a bit of phrasing and dynamics? And can I think about the speed that's indicated? Can I actually build up a picture over a short span of music? You know, and just take a line of just a few bars of a piece each day. So you don't spend hours on it, but you just try to hone those reading skills. And that's a topic in itself, isn't it? How we sight read. But, you know, looking for patterns in the music, just sort of seeing what is there that's going to help me work out how to sight read this. So you're not just going from one note to the next thinking, oh my goodness, what's the next note? But you're looking for scale patterns, arpeggio patterns, anything else that's going to help you locate that. As I say, a separate topic really, but find some time every day for sight reading. That will be really good. And try as well to find time to develop aural skills. Because actually, at the end of the day, music is about using your ears. So what we hear, how we hear it, is all absolutely critical to the cause. So having good aural skills. Now, this has always been difficult in the past. There have been instrumental teachers, singing teachers who say, well, I'm not very good at playing the piano, so I can't really do aural things with my students. I think that's actually not entirely true, because there are lots of things you can do from voice to voice or playing your instrument to instrument. You know, there are lots of things you can do there to overcome that. But these days, there's really no excuse. There are loads of opportunities. There's phone apps and all sorts of things. You know, courses like the Music Matters aural courses and things, you know, where you can literally practice these things in your own time on a regular basis and just develop those aural skills. So, you know, maybe not necessarily every day, because how do you fit all this stuff in, but several times a week, just thinking, let's just touch base with this and see if I can develop some aural skills, you know. And there are all sorts of things you can do just to work on your sense of pitch, your sense of rhythm. And again, another big topic, but lots of resources around to help with that. But make sure the aural skills are being developed. And here's another one that will be more popular with some people than others, but it's this. Tip number 9. Make time for theory. Now, the trouble is, as soon as you mention that word theory, it's kind of loaded, isn't it? It's kind of, oh gosh, not theory. That sounds so tedious, doesn't it? But actually, understanding your theory is all about actually understanding how music works. You know, what's going on in this piece of music that I'm working on here. And if I get a deeper understanding of this, it's going to help me with sight reading. It's going to help connect with my aural skills. It's going to help make this practice more effective, and the end result's going to be good. So don't think that there's kind of like learning an instrument or learning to sing, and then there's this horrible thing called theory that somebody might expect me to do. See the whole thing as a kind of rounded picture, and then you'll suddenly think, oh wow, it's amazing how many people I've taught over the years who've said this, you know, I hate theory, but I think I'll have to do some. And then they start learning it with me, and then they go, hey, actually, this is really interesting, isn't it? And you know that clarinet piece I'm playing? I realised it's got one of these things going on in it, and I've never known what that meant, and now I get it. So great, I love it when I see that connection being made and a kind of enthusiasm for theory that comes out of the fact that you've been playing, and suddenly all these things start to connect in a new way. So don't ignore the theory. And here's my last tip, and as I say, I could probably list another 40 tips, but anyway, these are just 10 that you might want to think about. Here's tip number 10, and this comes easier to some than to others, and it's this: be a perfectionist. That doesn't mean beat yourself up if it goes wrong. It just means be a perfectionist. When I was learning as a young child, I had a teacher who had something called the 6 times rule. And the way the 6 times rule works was this: if there was something I was having a bit of trouble playing, I had to practice it, and then I had to be able to play it 6 times in a row. If it went wrong on playing number 6, I had to start again and do it another 6 times. I felt that as rather kind of tedious and oppressive at the time, but actually it developed a really good habit for me, that 6 times rule, because I wonder how many times this has happened to you. You play something and you think, oh dear, that wasn't quite right. So you have another go and you think, oh yeah, that was better, that will do. On we go. I've done it. I do it now. I find myself doing it, and I hear this voice of this teacher just come in my head saying, come on, 6 times rule, and it comes back to haunt me. And it's such a good thing because it makes me stop and think, no, let's do this. Let's play it 6 times. Is it right 6 times? If it isn't, well, have another go. Do it another 6 times, because that drills it. You know, be a perfectionist. Don't aim to sort of get through somehow on a wing and a prayer. Let's hope for the best. You know, if I've got the wind behind me, it might be okay. You know, just work at this until it can't go wrong. You know, don't practice until you can get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. There's always going to be the risk of something going wrong. That's live performance. But you've got to try and put yourself in a place where you're being as much of a perfectionist as you can. So there we are. 10 tips that hopefully give you plenty of food for thought on practicing really effectively. So good luck with that really important musical agenda. Enjoy.